Hey, welcome to Vortex Garage, and today we've got kind of an interesting vehicle in the shop here. This is, I guess you would call it a Pontiac or maybe a Toyotiac, I guess is the right term. So I don't know, I have to think about that. But basically what this is a 2005 Pontiac Vibe. And the Pontiac Vibe is an interesting vehicle because basically this is a Toyota Matrix with Pontiac skin over top. And the Toyota Matrix is based on the Toyota Corolla chassis. This is an example of what they call platform sharing. This is where GM made a deal and said, hey, Toyota, we'd like to sell this and we're going to badge it as a Pontiac and we'll have a manufacturing deal with you. They used to do this a lot in the 80s. In fact, I think the Chevy Nova in the 80s was actually a Corolla. And of course, GM had Geo in the 90s. If you remember Geo, the Geo Prism was a Toyota Corolla that was rebadged. Then, of course, GM also had a lot of deals with Suzuki. Geo was a big user of Suzuki products. So the Geo Metro was a Suzuki Swift. The Geo Tracker was a Suzuki Sidekick. It definitely shows you that there was that platform sharing where it started in the 80s where a lot of US car makers wanted to have other small vehicles that came from Japan because the Japanese small cars during the 80s and at the end of the Malaise era were getting very popular at the time. And in order to keep up, the American manufacturers said, hey, let's make some deals and let's bring those in. We'll badge them as our own. A good example of that was Colt. Colt was basically Mitsubishi products sold in Dodge dealers under this sub-brand called Colt. Of course, we got our Spitfire back here. Another great example you might not know about. There was a Triumph that was a rebadged Honda Accord sold kind of at the tail end of Triumph's existence in the early 80s. But the platform sharing that GM did, it was sharing. So of course, hey, I get something from you. I get a Toyota Matrix and I get to put Pontiac stickers on it. Well, what does Toyota get in return? Well, I'm pretty confident that Toyota got something in return that maybe they didn't get the greatest end of the deal. They got to sell, and I'm going to validate this, but I'm pretty confident it was Toyota who sold a rebadged Chevy Cavalier in Japan. So it's basically a Cavalier with Toyota badging on it. Here in the US, we get the Toyota Matrix, which is basically a Corolla. And over there, they get a Chevy Cavalier. I think we might have got the better end of the deal there, no offense to the Cavalier fans. You could make the argument that this is basically us sharing our cockroaches. Those things pretty much never die. So we got to share our cockroaches, and this is what we got. So we're going to take a quick look at this car, and basically it's in here. We're going to go through this entire vehicle for somebody. We're going to see what's wrong with it. We're going to take care of some things on it. It has a vibration, it has a leaking sunroof, and it has a blend door actuator that's not working. So we're going to solve all those issues. So why don't we grab a camera and take a look at it. All right, of course we got our helpers today. We had to do one cut of our original intro because you were squeaking your toy a little too much. Oh, that one, huh? You were squeaking that one, weren't you? Give me that. You gonna chase him? Go chase him. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this thing. So, hey. All right, we might have to cut here and let them settle down. All right, so this is the 05 Pontiac Vibe. So if I remember correctly on my Vibes, they made these from 03 to 2010. And I think the first 2 years, 2003 and 2004, they had a different fascia that was a little more indented and kind of interesting looking, kind of had a Aztec vibe. They were going for that whole styling vibe. 05 and beyond, they kind of smoothed it out a little bit, so the grill's a little smoother. And I think it actually does look a lot better. And then I think 09 and 010 is when they did the restyling. That's when the Matrix got restyled and Pontiac did the same. And the end outcome of that, I'll try to post the pictures of actually a pretty smooth looking car. So I think in the in-between models, I kind of like this style to the originals. I'm sure that's a subjective thing of taste. I think the later ones, obviously the 09 and 10, are probably the best, smoothest looking ones. But this particular one, I think with the upgraded fascia here, does improve the overall looks of it. Now this one's bright red, and if we take a look at the body, it does have some imperfections that we're going to try to take care of. If I don't wash it out with the camera, here's a nice dent. But if we go around the vehicle, we'll see there are a few little dents and dings. Not too bad, and all in all, the paint's not in bad shape. It's a bright red. Here's a pretty big oil can dent right here. An oil can dent basically refers to in the old days where you'd have literally a can of oil. They would get dents in the side, almost like a paint can you might see today in the store. And they're fairly easy to pop out. The metal actually kind of wants to return to its shape. So that's going to be the easiest one to do, I believe. Other than that, it looks pretty decent. One thing I noticed, it does have a replacement headlight, whereas this one is the original. So what we can do, there are two options here. We can buy another replacement headlight to make a match, or we'll just use a headlight restoration kit and we'll go ahead and clean that one up and get it about as crystal clear as that one. And then we'll coat both of them with the UV coating. So that way, hopefully they last about the same. That'll be the cheaper option there. So that's pretty much the outside. It's a little hatchback, which is kind of nice. This was kind of the early crossover days. This is when, you know, people wanted these kind of more sport utility oriented small cars that weren't quite sport utilities. Nowadays, most crossovers are actually sold as sport utility vehicles. So, you know, like the RAV4, which did exist in this time, has stayed, whereas the Matrix isn't made anymore. You know, a lot of car makers were starting to explore the whole crossover thing where, hey, instead of buying a Corolla, you might want something where you sit up a little higher, you've got a little more room for your gear because, you know, you're doing extreme sports. You can put your BMX bike up there, your kayak because you're going to go whitewater rafting. Like the Aztec, I wonder if they sold a tent that comes out the back of this thing. Anyway, let's take a look inside. You do get a nice hatchback, which is good. There's plenty of room in here, actually, if you look back here. This does have the upgraded stereo, the Monsoon audio. I think Toyota had a similar upgraded stereo with the same setup. They didn't brand it as Monsoon. I don't know what the Toyota branding was. Let's take a look. I've already unlocked these, so we can take a look underneath. Looks like we got our spare tire equipment, a little bit of lockable storage, which is nice. And oh, check it out. Emergency drumsticks. Nice, never know when you need those. So you got your storage for your emergency drumsticks, right, buddy? Not the drumsticks you like. Of course, you can't eat a chicken drumstick because of the bones, but you like chicken? Do you like bones? Oh, look who heard that. All right, let's check out the interior. Gwen wants to check it out. All right, power windows, locks, all that good stuff. So I made mention that kind of early crossover days, they sort of made the seats sit up a little higher, and that's kind of what I would describe this as. It's like almost like a tiny little minivan or something like that where, well, it's hard to describe, but basically the seats are on a bit of a pedestal, so you kind of sit up in them. All right, did I bring the key? All right, so we went ahead and turned on the accessories so you could see everything lit up, and we let the beeping finish up. So that's why you're gonna see some lights on because we don't have the car running. But very Toyota-esque kind of instrument cluster. But then if you kind of take a look here at the stereo, this is a little more GM of the era. This is kind of the GM's factory stereo. Everything Pontiac had back then had a lot of red backlighting and things like that. So you can kind of see a mix, like you see GM here, and then this very Toyota of the era. So same with the gauge cluster. But all in all, the gauge cluster is kind of cool. It looks nice. It's got multiple colors, very easy to read. It's got pretty much everything that you need, though if I were Motor Week, I'd be a little upset that there's no voltage or oil pressure meters. But it's a Toyota. What's going to go wrong? Why do you need it? So, oh, it's got a CD player. Oh, there's a CD in it. All right. All right. It's a, oh man, maybe we should keep that. Wonder how many seconds of this until I get booted off YouTube. All right, let's turn that off so we don't get in trouble. So then we've got our AC controls. Let me get some light so you can see. We got our AC controls here. It does have your 12-volt socket. And then you've got a button here. I'll just put it in gear so you can see. You can turn on It looks like it has an inverter. It has a little 115 volt, how many, 100 watt little plug. Of course, you got your shifter, overdrive button. The thing I found this kind of neat, this little thing right here. This is, again, like, it's a 2005. This is pre-iPhone. You know, of course, we had Blackberries back then and Palm Pilots and stuff like that. But this is like a perfect size for a modern smartphone, especially even a big one. This would hold like a Note or an iPhone Pro, one of the big ones. Just slide right down in there and hold it right there. That's perfect. You got your cup holders, pretty big console there. Again, because we're sitting kind of high up here, it's pretty deep. It's got leather seats. Leather seating in the back. And fair amount, looks like a fair amount of legroom, all things considered. One thing I mentioned, we knew the sunroof's going to have some issues, so we're going to have to take a look at the drains. It's only on this side, so it's probably the drain. This is where it sat underneath the tree and got all the tree droppings and everything. You can see here there's a little bit of water damage on the headliner. So we're going to track the drains, figure out where they go, and get them cleaned out. Let's take a look under the hood. So this vehicle, if you might have noticed in the interior, has about 90,000 miles on it. And as you can tell, very much a Toyota setup under here. VVTi, of course, being the Toyota variable valve timing designation. And this, in fact, is a Toyota 1.8 liter engine. So this particular engine is I think 125 or 130 horsepower and very reliable motor. Basically what you'd find in many Toyotas, including the Corolla. Unique to this engine, it actually does use a timing chain, not a timing belt. So there's not a timing belt service that needs to be done on this one, which at 90,000 miles would certainly be a consideration. Now, a lot of modern engines like the GM Ecotechs do have problems with their timing chain setups on the 4 cylinders. But everything I can gather, these seem pretty reliable and trouble-free. And certainly this thing runs perfect and does not sound bad at all. So it's in good shape. Now again, you can certainly see a lot of these are Toyota parts. You've got definite Toyota radiator here. This cap's got Japanese writing on it. Again, Toyota engine. If you've ever worked on some of the Toyotas, you know this master cylinders Toyota. So again, very much Toyota parts under here. In fact, if you kind of look at this vehicle, you might see the Pontiac badge there, but then you work your way back. And as soon as you get past the front fascia, you'd have trouble determining that this isn't a Toyota underneath. Even the original stickers on here, again, for the cooling fans, definitely Toyota parts. So on these vehicles, ABS was optional. This one doesn't appear to have ABS. I don't see any ABS pump. And there's a little distribution block back there. I think the all-wheel drive versions had ABS standard, but it was optional on the front-wheel drive. We'll probably go ahead and test our battery. It certainly starts and runs fine. But honestly, I think Interstate nowadays is using like Johnson Control batteries, which is kind of a bummer. As we all know how much I dislike those. And but you can tell because they have like black casings now. I haven't seen the green with the white casing in a while. So maybe we'll plug in our battery tester and see what we get out of that. All right, we got our battery tester hooked up. Go ahead and do a quick test of this battery. So this is a good recharge, measured 363 cold cranking amps and out of 550, so really not terribly good. We'll put it on a good charger and we'll see if it comes back. Well, I think that's about it under hood. There's not much else to say. I think we'll go ahead and get this up in the air and take a look underneath and see what this car's made of. All right, let's go ahead and check underneath and check the mechanicals on this 2005 Pontiac Vibe. We've got it up in the air. So first thing we notice, since it's up in the air and easy to see, you can tell there's a little bit of corrosion on the wheel. It's a little bit of paint bubbling. Not too bad, but it is causing the paint to crack and flake a little bit. Typical of a strut boot up there. That rubber strut boot is torn, the bellows. But other than that, it looks to be in decent condition. All right, looks like we got a plastic piece broken off here, one clip, so that's simple enough. We'll pop that out and get a replacement in there. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Look at this side. It's not a plastic clip. It actually is a screw that screws in. There you go. Now you can see it. See, I can hold a camera. That's kind of unique. How's this side look? Oh, this side has push pins, which makes me think either this side should have push pins or somebody replaced those like we're gonna do. And looks like we got 1 missing, 2 missing, 3 missing, if you can see that on the bottom of the screen there. So a little bit of push pin work up here on the underside cladding, no big deal. There's our AC condenser, accumulator. Everything looks pretty good under here. AC works good. I have driven it, so. That's the ambient air temperature sensor for the display on the dash. I'll get some close-ups on the next one, but I'm going to inspect this one. Boots on the ball joint look good. CV joint boot looks good. Strut looks good. Boot on the tie rod looks fine. Everything feels tight. Control arms, bushings don't look bad. Everything looks pretty good here. Everything's tight. That's good. Here's the other side of the CV axle. No seepage or anything out of the output there. That's good. In fact, everything looks pretty dry under here. Here's the oil pan. There's a little bit of seepage. I think you can see that right there on the oil filter. I believe it just had a recent oil change, so it could simply be from that. Because I'm kind of looking up here if I can get the camera up. It looks pretty dry otherwise. There's the electric fan. It's like transmission cooler lines. Everything looks dry up there. That's good. Lines don't look rusty. They all look coated, which is, gosh, I wish more manufacturers did that. There's a little bit of rust on the line on the corner there, but not too bad. I'll tell you, if you've either watched our videos or just heard us complain about things, it seems like steel lines, transmission lines, brake lines, especially at a car this age, just seems to be what we're always replacing. The F-250, the Expedition. But yeah, everything looks good there. Oh, this side looks pretty much the same. Feels pretty tight. So our sway bar links. They're looks like the ball joint style. And they look like they're holding together. That's something that's pretty common. The boot on that one up there does look a little torn. Yep, little torn right there, but it's still on. But that might be something to do. Do the end links. Steel subframe and everything looks good. Remarkably clean. There's the sway bar, there's the exhaust, the upper catalytic converter. Some motor mounts, or transmission mount. Look, it's hard to get on camera, but it looks good. Steering rack. There's one of the oxygen sensors. Looks like the downstream one. The upstream one should be up basically on the top of the engine. You can kind of see it up there. I don't know if I can get it with the camera. It's kind of back there shining in the top. But this kind of caught my eye. This is unique. Usually with oxygen sensors, the wires route into the engine compartment. But look at this one. Routes up into the floor pan. Looks like it goes up into the footwell somewhere. I wonder if that goes into the interior dash harness. This is a remarkably clean car, I gotta say. The rubber isolators on the exhaust mounts all look good. Very little rust. These lines are, again, coated. The fuel and brake lines, they look great. Got a little bit of a scrape on that one, it looks like, but just a little bit on the coating. Other than that, look at that, they look perfect. This is amazing. I'm so used to these just looking like trash. All right, what do we got here? All the fuel line hoses. One thing I didn't notice was a fuel filter. So I wonder if it's back around the tank somewhere. Has a solid rear axle, even though it's front wheel drive. You just got this beam axle back here. They did have an all-wheel drive model, so that would have had a little drive shaft to bring power to the back and would have a little rear differential. This one doesn't have it. Those, I understand, have a bearing on the front where the drive shaft hooks up, and that bearing is known to go bad and cause some vibrations. And that's one thing this car is here for, is it has vibrations. And I thought, well, maybe it's an all-wheel drive one and that's what it is, but no, it's front-wheel drive. So maybe it's a wheel bearing or something like that. We're gonna look at that. The front wheel bearings felt fine. I've already kind of tugged on them before I got the camera. So looking back here, tank straps are stainless steel. They look great. I mean, just look at how clean everything is here. This thing, like I said, only has like 90,000 miles on it. And looks like it was very well taken care of. So there's one of the unit bearings in the back. It's a drum brake car in the back as well. And then here's the other one. So I am curious if, oh. I just saw something and moved the camera so you could see it. Can you hear that? Neither can I. It's perfectly silent. Feels perfectly tight. Feels great. Now let me grab the camera and show you what I am pretty confident the issue is. Let's take a look at these tires here. All right, so look at the tread. Look at, where's my light? Here it is. Pretty apparent the front tires were replaced at some time, but these back tires weren't, or they were moved. Look at that crack. These are old dry rotted tires. Look at that crack there. Let's look up here and see. Doesn't look so, ooh, yeah, that looks bad. Look at that cracking. And you know what we're gonna go look at because you saw it already. I am a little bit freaking out because I drove this about 12 miles to get here and I felt the vibration and I was like, well, let me get it to various speeds. We're on a fast road, so I was doing over 60. Trying to see if the vibration would change at different speeds, and I think I know what it is. Look at that. That's deep. If you can see that with the flashlight, that goes into the tire, into the sides, the cords. Oh, wow. Let me just turn that so you can, oh! Oh! This tire is about to blow out. In fact, I'm kind of spooked standing this close to it. Look at that. I am just happy right now that this didn't blow out on the right here when I'm trying to figure out what the vibration is, thinking maybe it's a unit bearing. I'm pretty sure I found the vibration. I guarantee you it's got to be this tire. Let's look at this one and see how it is. A little harder to see on camera. I'm seeing some dry rot, big time dry rot, but not splits like that one. There's a little split right here, but tons of dry rot around the side. Ooh. Even looks a little like it's starting to bulge a little there. Well, I think we found a problem. And I think that problem is that it needs tires. I think that we found our vibration, and this thing is not going to go another mile until it has fresh tires on it. In fact, I'm not even going to drive this thing to the tire store. I'm going to order some tires, and when they get here, I'm going to take them down in the truck. We'll put this thing on jack stands or leave it on the lift. We'll go have the tires installed on the rims and then remount them, because I don't want to drive that to the tire store. Well, what I am seeing from this car underneath is it is remarkably clean. It is in remarkably good shape, but this is a prime example of age. Rubber ages, tires age. All right, hopefully you enjoyed checking out this 2005 Pontiac Vibe. And if you did, definitely check us out, because we're going to have some more on this vehicle. I'm not sure we're going to bring the cameras along for every bit of work that we do and do detailed, in-depth how-tos, because there's a lot of content on this vehicle already out there on the internet, and bringing cameras really slows us down. And I do kind of want to just get through this, do the jobs quickly, get this thing out the door so we can work on some other stuff that we're lagging behind on. Again, if you enjoyed this, drop us a like and a subscribe, and we'll have more here on Vortex Garage.